We're going to bring back Amisha Cross and Brendan Buck. Brendan, first question to you on this. Does this even qualify as an October surprise? And here's why I ask it. Is this going to have an effect on the campaign? And if it does not, what does that say?
Yeah, I mean, you could add this to the list of things that in a normal world would be disqualifying for the president, or at least be a huge October surprise. Look, I'm frankly surprised that the Harris campaign hasn't leaned into this attack a little more. Not this specific one, of course, it just came out. But former President Trump was found liable for sexual assault in court not that long ago. There are so many credible allegations against him, and that doesn't seem to have been much of the focus for the campaign. Maybe they just have polling that shows that, yeah, to your point, people have heard this so many times and they just think that Donald Trump is a bad guy and they get it and they're not going to change their mind about him. But it feels like, if you want to really underscore the character of a person, someone who was found liable for sexual assault, that sure should register for a lot of people. But, they just haven't pressed that issue.
Amisha, your thoughts on this?
Well, I would argue they haven't pressed the issue because the issue was pressed, and we saw that, everyone saw that the polling did not change. We saw that the people who were dug in to support Trump were still dug in to support Trump, and the people who were going to support Harris, or the people who were already supporting, Biden before Harris got into this race, they were still in those camps. At the end of the day, what we know from Donald Trump is that he has over 24 credible allegations of sexual assault. We know that he was found liable for rape. We know that this is somebody who has a long-standing history of being aggressive towards women. We know that this is someone who said, grab him by the genitals. I'm not going to say that word on these airwaves. This is a guy who did all of those things and was still out here fundraising, was still out here getting love from crowds. This is a guy who is still chosen as the leader of the Republican Party. So, no, it has not made that much of a difference. And unfortunately, unless white women specifically show up at the polls and show that it makes a difference to them, I don't think that anyone else is really going to grab a hold of this. Because at the end of the day, much of these allegations, this most recent one aside, voters already knew about. They know who Donald Trump is. It's baked into the cake that is that man. And at the end of the day, it has not really it does not move the needle when it comes to the polls. That's why there's so much of a dead heat. And I think that the Harris campaign will be wasting their time in trying to prove to people the misogynistic, the attack-worthy, the individual that Trump is, because he proves that to us every single day.
Yeah. Listen, let me just correct you on one legal point, because it is important. There is a distinction between rape and sexual abuse, and the latter is what Donald Trump was found liable for. So just to be clear on that.
The judge said that it was rape. I didn't say that. That came from the judge.
Right. But legally speaking, I just wanted to clarify and say what he was actually found guilty of. So there you go. So or actually liable for. So, Brendan, Harris and Trump, they have seen this widening gender gap. Trump has focused much of his attention on young men, which appears to be succeeding to some degree. But can he really afford to lose such a large portion of women voters who are typically the most reliable voters?
Yeah, I mean, I think to continue that conversation, it may be all these allegations against him. It may actually be having an effect because he's getting killed among women, and they seem to know that. And the Trump campaign seems to be doing nothing really to make up for that, other than random tweets where he says I'm going to be great for women. That's not very convincing. But what they're doing instead, of course, is trying to make up the difference with men. That's why he sat down for what is probably the longest presidential interview ever. 3 hours with Joe Rogan, because lots of young men listen to that, and they're hoping that they can turn out a bunch of people, and I think we've talked about this, who are pretty adoring fans of Trump, but we don't know if they're actually going to be reliable voters, and that's the bet that they're making. They're getting killed with women. Can they make up the difference with men, young men, in a way that nobody has ever really done before, and that could decide the outcome.
Hey, do you think anyone's going to listen to 3 hours of Donald Trump going on and on? I'm just curious, Brendan. Do you think actually these guys are going to sit down and hang out for 3 hours listening to that podcast?
Well, I'm not a Joe Rogan listener, but his podcasts are typically 2 or 3 hours, and millions of people listen to them every day or week. So it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of people actually do, and the type of people who vote or politicians typically ignore. And so credit to him for sitting down there that long.
Okay. So, Brendan, actually, Amisha, I'll ask you this one. The details of this poll might be even more important. Harris has cut Trump's lead in the economy by half from last month. Trump's lead is now down to about 7 points, and Harris also leads by 10 points among voters who are not fully decided. Trump previously had a slight edge in that one. Does momentum here tell you more than a generic head-to-head poll can?
I think it absolutely does. It also shows that her messaging has been cracking that wall, in particular around the care economy, the people who are stuck in that sandwich generation, childcare and childcare supports. When Donald Trump was asked a policy question about childcare and how to make it more affordable, his answer was childcare is childcare. I don't know what the hell that means, and people who have children don't either. I think that for her, it is talking about housing, making sure that people are able to afford that first home, increasing leveraging points for folks who are going to start that first small business, access to capital. That makes a difference. I think that her messaging about all of these economic issues, about what that opportunity economy is cracking through, and that's making a difference.
Okay. I want to thank you both as always. Please come back next weekend because you know it's going to be even more anxiety-ridden, and I'll need you both to help us get through it. Thank you.